leave for 5 seconds. Hello, welcome back to a video after a year of not properly posting anything because my life decided to screw me over and make working on videos and bigger projects basically impossible. I am working on a much bigger project at the moment, but this should serve as at least something to tide you all over because this next one is not remotely related to anything I've ever done, and quite frankly, I want to strangle it. If you're wondering where I've been busy with college and witnessing the horrors. Nevertheless, I'm back, despite what I said around 7 months ago. And while I was away, Colin Brady decided to drop the entirety of the 2007 version storyboards months apart. Trust me when I say I have been watching. I couldn't even ignore these while I was doing school. I had these come onto my page constantly. So naturally, I'm making another video to compensate for my absence and just get my energy out. Starting from the top, over the past 6 months, Brady released 4 storyboards going over what seemed to be the 2007 version of the film that allegedly got him replaced since Imaji wanted to go into a different direction. At least I vividly remember that being said, but I cannot for the life of me find the source, so take that with a grain of salt. And probably never saw the light of day. Until now, that is. I will say a lot of this material seemed repurposed for the final version of the film, presumably because it didn't have enough time to start from scratch. I'd love to do a timeline or in-depth video about this movie's development someday, but I just really don't have enough information or time to do so yet, but with these storyboards coming up, maybe some more production info will over time? I can't say. We're going to be going in chronological order, or how the storyboards were initially posted onto YouTube to Colin Brady's channel, which will have the @ always kind of under it because I believe in giving credit. Part 1 of the storyboards immediately starts off with Astro. I know what you're wondering. Where's the opening? Where is that? It's not here. The first 20 minutes of the '09 version of the film are either absent from the storyboards or final version exclusives. Either way, we don't have them. Or the film just cold opens on Astro blasting the shit out of stuff. The first 20 minutes of the film we all know, including Toby going to school all the way to when Astro's made, is completely absent. Instead, we get a scene where Astro's ahead and Tenma's... oh my god. Okay, warning for the rest of this video, Tenma in these storyboards is one of the slimiest, rotten things I've ever seen. He looks like he crawled out of a rejected Roald Dahl book and wants to kill anything that moves, like, Jesus Christ. He's essentially rambling about revenge and how Astro's going to be perfect, flawless, while Astro blindly agrees with whatever is being said, and this genuinely sickens me.
Yes, Father. Only better.
You'll be brilliant.
This immediately sets up Tenma in an almost opposite version of him into the final film, where he's mostly a humanized broken washing machine and gives him a revenge plot. The reason for, however, fluctuates, you could say. His reasoning is much more complex later on, but right now it's just, what do you want, sir? Order at the fucking window. I must also emphasize that Tenma here is not called Dr. Tenma, but Dr. Tanner. I know I shit on Bill Tenma of '09 fame, but I'm grateful we at least didn't get that in the final movie. Moving along, we get a peek at the Ministry of Science and its parking lot, surprisingly, with Tenma's space saying that anyone else who parks there will be disintegrated. I think that's very telling of what kind of tone they were going for. I forgot to mention this during the recording, but there's a running gag where Tenma just has a billion orphans in a gumball machine and repeatedly kills them when they piss him off, so I think that is actually very funny. Regardless, Ochana presentation about the cores, once more, is present, but this time, it's not just the cores, it's a core. There's only one. I think this idea could be better than the original given in circumstances, as the cores in the final product are much more simple concept-wise as they're labeled as positive, negative, whereas the '07 version is simply a core, not good or bad, just a massive source of energy, with the emphasis being placed on how it's used rather than what it is prior to that. Stone also interrupts the same as he does with the final version, and expresses his desire to use it as a weapon, whereas Ochana wishes to use it to help better the surface life. I feel it's necessary to mention the voices of these two as well, because Ochana here is Dr. Elephant, as he is in the final film, but here, for some reason, he is Scottish. I can't tell if this is a deliberate choice or simply a placeholder voiceover for the storyboards, but regardless. Stone, on the other hand, is voiced in the storyboards by
I don't trust myself enough not to fuck up his name, but here he is.
of Star Trek fame, and a whole bunch of shit. Brady went on to say in the YouTube comments section that he was indeed cast as Stone, but was replaced after he was removed as director. The reason for this decisioning being unclear, but Donald Sutherland was still a great pick to me, because I idiotically forgot to mention in my Stone video, he plays President Snow in the fucking Hunger Games. You know, John Dictator. I will say Stone in this version is clearly a much more well-rounded character rather than the final version, which I wish I could say remained a political parody of the past.
They're eating the dog.
Where it's stated in the storyboards that the military has forcibly seized control of the military.
I meant ministry.
Presumably after the fucking incident. Toby's death in this movie is so much more violent than the final product, or any of the other ones. It's baffling. It's even more confusing how this got past the writing phase in the first place. They could have stuck with the car accident and it would have been fine, but no, getting disintegrated wasn't bad enough. Toby was shot dead in this movie. Full-on shot dead via gun turret. And the worst part, it was fully Tenma's fault. Similar to the final version, he sneaks in during a weapons testing, but instead of the Peacekeeper, it's a massive fucking gun that shoots whatever moves. This is the only time Toby is shown in this movie, almost making this movie the one with the least amount of Toby screen time. The other ones at least give him a little time, I'm not counting Pluto, but dear God, they took him out back and shot him. Literally! Tenma went on to steal the core from the ministry to enact revenge, and wherein lies the question of what exactly he wants his revenge for. You'd reasonably assume it's for Toby's death, but that was his fault. At least we're led to believe so. Could he potentially be using the military as a scapegoat for this, as the '09 movie implied that all their funding came from military and were being kept afloat by developing weapons for them? Absolutely. But here, he wants his rightful place in Metro City back, which ties to an earlier scene of him having his statue being replaced by stone. He had an entire ass statue dedicated to him, and for some reason, it had to be taken down. However, this doesn't happen for no plain reason, so I have a theory. Using all the available information from the storyboards, I've been led to believe that Tenma was basically a celebrity or founding figure of Metro City, and Toby's death led to him being overruled and the ministry taken over by the military. Later on in the storyboards, Metro City is called Tanner's, as if it belongs to him. I'm not even sure how people on the surface know about Tanner, unless they serve as a neglected part of one state, like Piltover and Zon in Arcane. Regardless, Tenma's way bigger of a deal here than he was in the final product, only being called the father of modern robotics in a school seminar, which I still believe is propaganda. However, the ministry being overrun with the military as a result of something, as Ochana Muso complains about there being military folk around all the time. The military doesn't intervene unless something happens, and his complaining sounds like it's a recent result of something. Now, Stone's reasoning for taking a liking to the core is also unexplained in this version. Sure, he just wants a weapon, but why? He doesn't even mention a re-election here, surprisingly. Not even once. He looks like he just wants to fuck with Tenma. Could this be commentary on how powerful figures often do intervene with science and halt its progress? Absolutely. I just think Stone took advantage of the Toby incident and seized the ministry, because of course the government has no problem with keeping the children safe as an excuse to do abhorrent acts. Cut to Tenma powering Toby on. Wires and everything similar to the 60s and 80s version of this scene keeps going on about how Astro will be his perfect being and they will have their revenge. I'd like to read off a YouTube comment from Brady about Tenma in this version. Quote, "In this version, we wanted Dr. Tenma to be more directly responsible for Toby's death. He masks his guilt by blaming others and trying to make the perfect child who never dies." Which I think explains a lot of his behavior in the storyboards, especially this kind of obsession with perfection when it comes to Astro. This leaks over to the final version only during a brief scene where he's being built, which I had tallied in one of my other videos. I think this approach to Tenma is much more in line with his previous incarnation, as Tenma's always voiced his frustrations with Astro and not being a perfect replica, blaming the invention rather than the inventor. It's almost like he can't mentally handle any more blame in the situation or would fall apart otherwise, so he just blames Astro instead. Now this is where most of the major differences between the two versions start to arrive. Whilst Tenma in the final film is frustrated with Astro not acting like Toby, here he's frustrated with him showing any kind of emotion or quote-unquote flaw, like smiling. To me, it looks almost like Tenma's using the notion of creating him to be perfect as something good that can come from Toby's death. Like, if he can perfect Astro, then Toby's death can be washed from his hands, whilst at the same time blaming everyone and everything around himself as he blames him internally. He takes that out on Astro and the Ministry instead of facing what he's done, perhaps thinking that the only way to go is the path that he's treading. In my notes, I called his notion of revenge almost selfish because it looked like he was using Toby's death to take back the Ministry and earn his place back, as he said, to get revenge. This is a much more 2003-esque approach to him, and I think that is also much more interesting than the final product we got, where he's practically, I hate Astro until he has to kill him. I'm not hating, but I think any approach that tries to delve into that kind of bad scientist side that's shown more in the manga 60s and 2003 is extremely welcome. The morning lesson scene is replaced with Tenma trying to examine what he's capable of, which I'd hope you'd know considering you built the boy, by essentially throwing him into the test chamber from the B movie. Astro is very so much a child at his core and pretends to ride the missile like an animatronic bull you'd see in a Texas bar, and asks Tenma for a puppy. As punishment for having fun, Tenma locks him into a room until he can run diagnostics on what he thinks is wrong with him. The flying scene is still present as it is in the final film, but the tone is much more different from the other. In the final version, it has a much more triumphant tone you'd expect in a superhero movie, whereas the 2007 version feels almost melancholic. Side by side, you can see the difference in tone, and the music plays a part in this as well. In the final version, it's triumphant brass instruments, an entire orchestra with the fucking Metro City Choir. That's literally what they're called, which I'd love to play, but YouTube would take me out back and skin me. The 2007 version, on the other hand, is much more timid in comparison. I heavily implore you to watch these storyboards yourself, but the music choice here is clearly something much more tame and quiet compared to the bravado of the final product, and there's a reasoning for that. Talking music for a moment, I'm unsure of the piece used in the storyboards, meaning I don't know if it was a placeholder or just was some copyright-free background music Brady found to post them on YouTube. The overall tone of the two versions is already distinct, with 09 feeling much more lighthearted and kiddie while still maintaining the environment and context to say something meaningful, to me at least. Whilst the 07 version is darker but has the room to say what it wants, albeit some more mature shit. Stone tracks in the same way he does in the movie, only this time Otonomizu is present and tries to protest to him being captured. Again, I'm very glad this version is doing much more with the pair of scientists because the 09 version underutilizes them heavily. They're just kinda there. Another thing I really liked about the flying scene in the storyboards is that there's these little light robots that roam around as fireflies and they go home at night to be the street lights. That's fucking adorable. That looks like it crawled right out of the 2003 show. That's adorable. I need them. And then we have the angst pits. Yet again, but this time it's so much worse. If you thought I don't want you anymore was bad, this is. I don't even know how to put it. This is just concerning. Instead of him coming back to hear the conversation, it's implied he gets caught and dragged back to the penthouse. Tenma goes on to theorize what's wrong with him, while Astro has to listen to everything, and eventually tries approaching Tenma to apologize, and he pulls this fucking face. I get that storyboards are supposed to be references for how the film was supposed to look and laid out, but they have to make him this slimy. This genuinely scares me to the point of wanting to print him out and rip him up just to please my own psyche. Astro tries apologizing for having fun, second time mind you, and Tenma goes fucking ballistic and hits him, straight up hits him across the face as he stumbles to the ground, then tells him he isn't his father, that he isn't Toby, and that he's a mistake. Otonomizu isn't even here. He's God knows where while this goes down, and then they get swatted. How on earth did this get past what I presume was the 2007 Standards and Practices Department? I ultimately understand why this was cut from the final product, as I think this, along with Toby's death, essentially made this movie impossible by 2007 standards, but I still think this was an interesting approach. We never really had the version of Tenma that's this detestable, with most of his other iterations still handling his grief. Here, it's completely absent. In the traditional sense, at least. On one hand, I really do appreciate the way that this was going. It's something completely different for the time, and he ultimately could have gone down as a good villain, but that's not really the point of Tenma. He's not supposed to be the ultimate mad scientist antagonist. He's the main character's dad. We're supposed to sympathize with his loss, but still disagree with his ultimate choice to abandon Astro. I think these Tenmas are two of the extremes on the Tenma spectrum, with 07 being the most absolutely vile creature to grace the line of my sight, and 09 being the most pathetic wet rag of a man. Anything in between is now a mixture of the two, and here's where I placed them. Immediately following this, they get swatted by Stone. Tenma gets restrained in what I can only imagine is Mommy Tomoe ribbon-ass tech, as he struggles and claims the core is his. I find it funny that Stone and Tenma both claim the cores are theirs respectively, when it's Uchenami's because he discovered and made the damn thing.
Stop! Damn it! Hold your fire! Stand down!
Speak of him and he shall appear. He busts in trying to defuse the situation and quite literally shields Astro from being shot by one of Stone's soldiers. Something that always frustrated me with the final film after seeing and reading the other series was the significant lack of Uchenamizu and Astro in the plot. I really do like that they tried including him as his character, but it feels lackluster without what is arguably the most important relationship in every other series being his with Astro. Here, this sets up what could be their relationship later on in the film by him basically saving him from dying. Usually it's Uchenamizu saving Astro from Hameg's circus or getting him out of stasis in the case of 2003. He's always been a fatherly figure to him outside of Tenma being his actual father. In the final film, he acts more as a voice of reason in contrast to Tenma's internal muddlement, and he only really interacts with Astro twice. Here, on the other hand, this actually lasts longer than both of those interactions in the final film combined, and resembles something actually from the source material. As much as I love the final film, I really wish they used Uchenamizu a lot more. Tenma, still restrained, directly sabotages this by triggering a weapon and making Astro go on the defensive, so Stone just says, "You should have gone for the head."
Now when you fire, aim for the head. What are you morons waiting for? Fire again!
Following this, we still get a pursuit type of scene that's there in the final film that eventually leads to Astro going down to the surface. Stone also explains exactly how they track him, which I'm going to assume is how they do in the final film, via radiation signals.
Or so much as takes a radiation leak. I want to know about it.
What the fuck? The surface in this version, contrary to the final film, is not immediately presented to us as the corpse amalgamation wasteland we all know and love, but rather as wooded and lush as parts of the surface are in the final film. If anything, this further proves why Metro City is an authoritarian state and actively pushes that propaganda, but that's just me. And we're promptly introduced to Trash Can, then named Pupbot. Instead of leading him into an obviously placed trap, this time he just straight up steals his arm and runs away. The two of them end up running into the Junkyard Pirates, now called Junkers, which were only featured in a short in the DVD for the final film, with their designs remaining mostly the same.
Gotcha!
What do you want? Freak.
How did they get away with that? What the hell is that goddamn tone? This is the second time. What the fuck? Also, by Stone's words earlier, he should have been found much faster if he was using his jets this often. The scene where he sits down and gazes up at Metro City longingly is still there. I'm not sure why I found that funny, but I did. Like, just beat for beat what happened in the final movie. The surface itself is still somewhat a hostile place, but looks to be much more structured and not completely in disarray. I do appreciate the fact that this version of the surface feels much more like a place that people actually live, that isn't just limited to trash pile, arena, and Hameg's house stuffed to the brim with children. It feels much more like a world that's actually being lived in rather than just being plot-relevant locations. I also feel like this version of the movie's humor is just very weird in a good way. I need you to see this play out.
Here, this one. Right here? Do you require glasses?
That's just funny to me. I'm not sure why. The orphans are still present as well, with Widget, Sludge, and Zane remaining the same in name and mostly design-wise. Astro meets the three of them as they try to make a break from stealing something in the surface town, to which their victim sticks his robot on them. Do you see the problem with this? The laws of robotics were pretty important in the final film as a major plot point that is brought up multiple times to the point of conflict for robots, specifically the RF, who are noticeably absent in this version, and they just don't exist here. But I can't even be that fucking mad about it because the Peacekeeper doesn't even follow the rules the final film sets. I would much rather not even have the laws of robotics at all in the final film if they're going to be disregarded. Looking at it now, they look like basic moral barriers for Astro because we can't have our protagonist robot hurting people now. Nope. We have to make a technological excuse for instead of making him a good person at heart, so it's even the fucking point! I'm a college student in my room yelling about a children's movie from almost 20 years ago. Well, there's no point in stopping. Astro stops the robot chasing them by pulling out the quote-unquote transmorgifier Johnson carburetor. Now I'd like you to guess what part of a machine that is. Because the Johnson carburetor is a real thing used in outboard motors. You usually find them in things like boat engines. However, a transmorgifier is not fucking real. I get this is supposed to be a joke, that oh haha, that's not a real part. I I just wanted to know what it actually was, okay? Next, we're taken to the kid's hideout, which extremely noticeably does not have Hameg. He's not even a twist villain here, he's just reduced to a side character cameo hosting the robot games. His house of children isn't even a house of children anymore, it's just where the main 4 kids live. Speaking of which, Cora is the one with the most differences in this draft, being called Mika and taking up Hameg's mechanic role, instead of all of them being part scavengers on his behalf. She still retains that edgy teenager vibe, but acts more as an older sibling to everybody. And back to Tenma escaping the prison cell he was placed in because they were stupid enough to throw him into a cell that he fucking designed. I should mention during Tenma's interrogation, there's a bit with Stone's wife. She's real. In the final film, she was only mentioned in passing. She's full on real and has lines, which mostly consist of her being on the other end of Stone's communicator and Stone trying to get out of talking to her. I find it funny that she existed in the draft but was reduced to being one of many wives, hopefully from divorces, mentioned by Stone. Tenma's clearly up to some goddamn trouble because we don't get much out of that until we're snapped back to the kids from scrapping, which they swear now!
Hey, can I help?
Go ahead and loosen some ass bolts.
This scene plays out a bit differently. At first it's the same with Astro going in through the back, dusting off a name card and using his core to power Zog back on. But where the final film cut to Hameg, instead we get to see him power back on from the outside and scare the living shit out of everyone else. He also gives one of the younger kids back their shoes since it had gotten stuck while they were running for their lives, and I think that's just cute. They also still include the montage of the kids getting him ready for the robot games, which now is called Battlebots, and we get an explanation as to why they want to even compete in the first place. I will say something that's only recently crossed my mind in terms of the final movie. Why did Hameg get to compete in his own goddamn games? Is that not a red flag to the rest of the competitors? On one hand, you could argue that it could be an open competition for anybody, but it's heavily implied that Hameg is the organizer. Is he strictly the organizer, or is he reaping profits from this, or is it just some sort of like gladiator entertainment? I mean, if he's the organizer, shouldn't there be standards for the game's outlined moves or parts? Does he have to inspect each robot before they register? And does this give him an unfair advantage, knowing what every other bot can do? How deep does the scam empire go? That Hameg video is going to be the death of me. If I ever fucking make it. Before we get to the day of Battlebots, Ochana was being interrogated by Stone for Tenma's whereabouts, similar to a scene much earlier in the final film. Stone's actually much more reasonable in the storyboards overall, only really playing up the intimidation factor to Tenma. In the final film, he restrains Ochana before asking him anything, but here he asks him repeatedly where Tenma is without even so much as putting handcuffs on him, and believes him when he says he doesn't know. In fact, during the presentation, he says technology is only useful when you can control it. Stone in the final film is much more impulsive, acting in ways that only benefit him, which is what fucks him over in the end. Here, he's rather calculated and has a solid motive behind his actions. In the storyboards, he doesn't really classify as a villain and falls more in line with an antagonist, only really going against the protagonist to further his own goals. I'm not making excuses for him, but let's try and play out his point of view. He knows what happened to Toby, and looking at it closer, Tenma couldn't prevent it because he knew he couldn't control the technology he was testing. Realistically, there had to have been other incidents like this at the Ministry. And no, I'm not talking more dead children, but rather he knows that the Ministry can create technology that can't be controlled. That's not ignorance, that's acknowledgement. I believe Stone in this draft was meant to portray the kind of leader that's afraid of progression. Perhaps technology in society is an uncontrolled variable and has some kind of iron fist ideology. I'm not saying he's good, but he's not bad either. He's explicitly only arrested the guy who stole a potentially dangerous weapon, but I can't praise him because he pretty much told his soldiers to aim for the head at an actual child. I feel like Stone's character here is more of a warning against ignorance rather than the final version's anti-authoritarianism. Also, his ringtone is the "Do you believe in love" song, as his wife calls him. I find that funny.
Post-recording here. I forgot to mention that Tenma's secret lab here is literally just his 2003 lab. Like, do you actively browse Zillow for rundown laboratories when you're evading the law, sir? Also, he keeps getting nastier. He'll be fine for one scene and then be whatever this monstrosity is.
The car scene with Cora and Astro is still here, but it's much shorter. They only really talk about what'll happen once Battlebots is over, their plans entailing to go somewhere that's still livable on Earth, and they'll use the prize money to go there, with Cora extending the offer to Astro to come live with them. Well, she offers it to Toby. They don't call him Astro for the entire film until the end of Battlebots, which we all know what happens there. With Cora, I refuse to call her Mika, I apologize. One thing I like about both versions is that they don't push a romance between these two for the sake of filling a box for the movie script checklist. I think any kind of romantic subplot would be extremely uncomfortable given Astro's circumstances of his entire existence. He's going to be the way he is, aka a child, for as long as he's around. I mean, they've tried doing this in the other series, but it's usually episodic or just not there. But I'm glad the movies don't try and force it in. The morning of Battlebots comes, and they immediately get their house probed. A Metro City robot that looks suspiciously like the artificial sun from the final ending of the film is there for some reason. It's really just another fight scene. But when all is said and done and Cora asks what happened, Astro pins it all on Zog. Very smooth. Okay, I do have to preface this next part with a warning. Not a trigger warning, but what you're about to hear about the Battlebots segment of this film and onward is just some of the most batshit insane material I've ever seen almost be put to film. I just want to ask Brady once, why? Why did you feel the need to do this? I'm not saying I dislike the material, I'm just concerned at how someone thinks this shit up in the first place. Regardless, let's go beyond the point of no return. We get to Battlebots with where Metro City probes around looking for Astro. They somehow don't find him despite his hairstyle being one of the most iconic of the 20th century, and the group brings Zog to the Battlebots loading area only to be met with this is somehow worse than the trash pile under Metro City. We're met with what's basically a robot butcher shop with their empty corpses being strung from the ceiling, swinging back and forth in front of his eyes. What the actual fuck? One thing about the original movie is that the other robots in the robot games aren't really acknowledged, and Astro obliterates them without a third thought, because we all know he'd have a second one, but here you really get to take in just how horrid this all is for Zog and Astro. Hell, after this they have to literally convince him to fight, saying we have to do this one little thing and they all get to live free somewhere else. I'm sure this will have no repercussions on the plot. We see him off into the games with a shot that actually nicely parallels the one where Astro wakes up in the games. I thought that was cool. Hemmings also here is a floating hologram head, and he looks almost as disgusting as Tenma. I didn't know it was possible for him to get greasier than in the other series, but they somehow fucking did it. Congratulations, whoever designed this. I feel like I need to take a shower just by looking at him. God, get him an orthodontist, Jesus Christ. The games go about as well as you'd expect, except they absolutely go to shit within seconds. Instead of Astro being forced into the games, he loses his shit at the sight of robots fighting and wants to stop it, only for he himself to go into the ring, black out, and rip every other robot into fucking shreds. There is robot blood on his hands, including Zog's. He fucking killed everybody! How the hell was this almost included? I'm all for kids movies being a bit dark. Fuck, I grew up on Don Bluth with my mom, but this is actually horrifying. The main character basically murdering dozens of his own kind, now being acknowledged. I know it's not that different in the final film, given what he does, but here it's fucking horrifying. The final film doesn't even acknowledge this. The storyboards just go, oh yeah, let's just have him fucking murder everybody, let the guilt eat him alive for the next 30 minutes. Like it's a normal Tuesday. Where was S&P? Where were the supervisors? Is the G rating here? Oh, you know what? It just left! After the robot bloodbath, Hemmick has to skim through the crowd with his giant horrifying head and ask who Astro belongs to, only for the Metro City police to drop in and start firing at civilians. They're screaming as they're being shot at, and the kids try to get out of the chaos without being shot, and Astro has to run away with his newly found trauma, and Tenma's just fucking there. He's just there. How? I don't know. He's just there. He's still like, hey, come back with me. It'll all be okay. And Astro agrees. He begs to be fixed for the slate to be wiped clean. What the fuck? What the fuck? This version of the movie is so close, it's so far from the final product, and even though I've seen these storyboards multiple times now, just watching them for the script again still floors me as to how we even got here. First off, I'm really glad they added the robot butcher shop type scene purely because of those implications in the final film are completely grossed over. They really don't have any lasting consequences. They absolutely acknowledge that the games are bad and have Astro fight in them willingly to push his decision to return to Metro City, but here they acknowledge both sides of that. They know exactly how fucked up this is through the eyes of a robot, and how fucked up it would be to throw our protagonist, who's actively been trying to suppress his robot traits and play human until now, into this kind of situation. There's literal blood on his hands, in a way which we never got to see the ramifications of in the final product. He also thinks he killed Zog, which is I don't even have the words. I think this choice narratively though really fit the situation because what he does after this is obviously disagreeable in the eyes of a viewer. By this I mean going back with Tenma. In the final film, I'm sure most of us would yell at our screens as they get on Stone's ship like, "Guys! Guys! 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 Come back! Guys! No! No!" Or that may just be me. But here we're forced to deal with the gravity of what he's done to other robots. I firmly believe that to make a character believe they're a monster, the audience by some extent has to believe it as well. We're unsure of what exactly he can do, as is Astro, but we've already seen what he's done. We're in the same shoes as him, that unknowing but mortified what did he just do, sharing in that foreignness that he has for himself. In the final film, it really doesn't work because we don't get to see his reaction to what he's done, and his good nature is solidified more than anything because he saves Hamig. I do believe holding these two scenes at the same emotional standard is unfair, as I think each Astro goes back to Metro City for different reasons. I think 2009 Astro goes back because he just doesn't think the world has a place for him, and the one he kind of rejected him once they found out his true nature. In 07, he flat out thinks he's a mistake and wants to start over. What I find more disturbing, however, is the city's choice just to start firing at civilians. In the final film, they only have soldiers aim at them, but here they just fire at them point blank, with the kids rushing through the crowd trying not to get shot or trampled. Another thing I don't understand with the storyboard version is the use of Stone. He is clearly an antagonist, but has rather explicitly been stated not to be the villain. He, however, goes out of his way to do shit like this, along with something that he does in the end that completely clashes with his efforts here. I know they're probably going for the morally gray type of character who realizes he's wrong about the threat, but that really isn't going to work when he sicks the army on a bunch of lower class citizens and probably ends up killing a dozen people. Probably even more even. Moving onward, Hamid gets his car key stolen by Cora in the same fashion as the final film, except as the prize of Battlebots being a giant car carriage thing, and they go off to try and help when they run into Zog, who is miraculously still running somehow. The kids have to go up to him and apologize for making him fight to get him on their side, which I thought was actually a really good decision. In the final product, Zog feels more like a mascot type of character, you know, being voiced by a celebrity and not really having an opinion, just like, hey, look at him! Look at him being painted by the kids. Isn't he cute? Look at this plushie of him. God, I want that plushie. Here, they actually try treating him with respect and it feels oddly better than the final version. After this scene, most of the storyboards are into a fading PowerPoint type of fading image, without really any voiceover, which is the bummer since these scenes were arguably the most important as they're the entire climax of the film. We didn't even get the scene where Tenma powers Astro down, though it's heavily implied what happens to him. In the final film, we get Tenma's redemption for his earlier bullshit by him deciding to stand by Astro instead of bending over and doing what Stone wants, and makes a decision to move on from Toby and embrace the son he now has. In 2007, he kills Astro and leaves his corpse empty and abandoned. What the fuck? Where did this even come from? It's shown after this that he just took the core and placed it into a new robot, presumably this film's version of the Beastkeeper, and is wreaking havoc on Metro City, but he kills Astro. Straight up. I mean, he gets revived by Zog, but Tenma literally kills him and leaves his body for whoever finds it, and probably would have ended up destroying it in his rampage on the city. He does not give a shit! I get their goal with his character was to have him grieve this way, but I think having him kill his son directly contradicts what he was trying to do in the first place. Even 2003, Tenma never went that far. Here, he's more focused on his revenge against whoever he decides is at fault, thinking that maybe he can sit above everything else that holds him back or has taken something precious from him, then he can be content with himself, not feel guilt for what he's done, earn back the place he always thought he had. If you couldn't tell, I like his characterization in this version more than the final film, but I really think the final film's direction was almost necessary, but added too much turtleneck. It seems like once Brady was replaced, they tried taking a complete 180 with Tenma and turning him into a much more emotionally driven character, and took some of the blame off him for Toby's death. But this still feels so far from his 2007 counterpart. It's like they saw what was going on and immediately decided that they needed to distance his character as much possible from this concept. The only problem with this, though, is that both versions feel distant to the original manga, or even anything they could have used as a reference. I'm not against Tenma being a villain. If anything, I'm all for more morally gray versions of him, like Pluto or 2003, but both of these are just too much in their own respect. Continuing on, Zog revives Astro in a similar fashion to the final film, and we get a few shots of what the final battle would have looked like, including Tenma being defeated and in a last-ditch attempt, sending off a giant missile that almost sinks the city. You're abhorrent! Astro has to save it from falling with his bare hands, as he does in the final film, and he dies! Yet again! It seems the power Zod gave him was only a temporary source, implying that the cores in this movie aren't self-sustaining, so Astro would have had a lifespan even with the core in his system. Oddly enough, I find that comforting. I know he isn't immortal in the final film and pretty much every other series, since his body can still be broken, but he's almost in the same situation as the gems from the Lustrous. Hear me out. Their bodies can be broken, but if all the pieces are put back together, then they're basically good as new. I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole because it's been digging at my brain for the past 2 years, but you get my point. He has a death here, and though it might be really far away, I find the idea of that much more comforting than him outliving everyone and everything as long as he stays in one piece. Turns out he's not dead because Puppbot had the core, somehow getting it after Tenma's massive robot was defeated. Do not ask me how this happened, I don't know. I don't even think the storyboarders know because he just has it. Astro gets permanently revived from this, and the most surprising moment in this entire draft is Stone lets it happen. He knows the core is going to be used for Astro, looks the situation dead in the face, and lets it happen. Again, this is the guy who shot at civilians earlier, but now, since I guess he saw Astro protect the city, he deemed his existence okay. I know this is a much more morally gray route, as he initially wanted the core to power a weapon of his, but ultimately lets it go here, be it from witnessing Astro go against his creator and save the city, or out of pure curiosity. That's something debatable. I personally believe it's just him waiting to see how things play out, because if he commanded the death of a robot who just saved the city, he'd most likely get backlash, and this Stone's smart enough to consider what people think of him, unlike his final counterpart. With all that said and done, we end off on a little montage of the city being rebuilt on the surface as Astro takes a break, and all's pretty much well. Oh god damn it. And that is the 2007 version of Astro Boy, about as best as I can explain it. It's clearly a much darker take and was trying to do and say quite a bit, and while I do think it was a bit ambitious for 2007, I still think it was worth the try. Either way, I don't favor one version over the other. The final product will always be dear to me because of what it is, what it's done for me, and where it's gotten me. But this version is the foundation of that. It has its own unique themes and characteristics. I think both of them have their flaws and great qualities, and I'm not here to preach about which one you should like more. Frankly, I'm even glad we got a movie at all. I think both movies feel lost in which direction they wanted to take, but 2007 feels much more directional in where it wants to go. I can appreciate all of the themes that both versions try to take into account, like environmentalism, consumerism, authoritarianism, and humanity. Whilst all these themes are present in the other iterations, they're given their own time to shine and develop with episodes and characters, because that's what Astro Boy inherently core works as, an episodic series. I'm not saying it's an impossible feat to adapt it as a film, nor should it always remain a series. You just have to find the right angle. With the final product, I think they were really goddamn close. I feel like they wanted to include everything they possibly could have in case they weren't given a sequel, and the final film suffered for it. Yes, I think the 09 version has its own flaws despite my loving ramblings about it. I would genuinely kill for a peek behind production on this movie and see what was actually going on behind the scenes. Alas, as I said before, we don't have enough information, and even if we do, I wouldn't know where the hell to look. Overall, I'm glad something like this even exists in the Astro Boy collection of media, even if it was never finished. Seeing more mature takes on the story is usually a rarity, with Pluto being a noteworthy one. I'm glad we're not straying from the borderline horrors this franchise has left in implications. Even if it's 20 years later, fuck, I'm old. That's all I really have for right now, unless more storyboards or material miraculously drop during the recording or editing process of this video. Please don't. I'll see you all whenever I decide to upload next, be it in the next month or 5 years, so goodbye for now. Also, as a quick announcement, this video will officially be the last one with any type of PNG things because I'm getting sprites. We're getting an upgrade. Thank you for watching this, and I'll try to post more consistently if it fits into my schedule, but thank you and goodbye for now. Also, if Colin Brady sees this video, I'm fucked.